took a couple minutes to start up this stream today. I also forgot to shut my door. So, anybody out there who's listening, if you feel like shutting the door, you can, but if you don't, it's okay. I'm not mad if you don't. So, anyway, hi everybody. I just got this started. I was trying to verify my Google account, which I just got done, but now I have to redo everything I had already done in order to be allowed to upload these longer videos to my school YouTube. So, you guys may have noticed or know that I have uh, made it possible for you guys to, watch these videos and things later. And for Twitch, you can just come on here and see this whenever you want. But um, for the Google Meet, I'm recording that and I'm posting it to YouTube, which is what I'm showing you right now. This is where I would have to restart it if I wanted to. Oh, hey, I wonder if I can. Oh my God, please. Yes. Processing abandoned. Can I not? Oh man, I was just hoping. I'm not going to try to upload it while I talk to you guys, but I'm actually going to log in on my other computer to have the stream chat up. One of the things I've realized how to do because of these hangouts was that I can do it this way with this other computer, so I don't have to have you guys seeing the chat 2 times, which is nice. So twitch.tv/historygal. Let's see if there's anybody here first, because like I said, I was a minute late. Also, I'm just talking about annotated bibliographies. So if anybody is here, oh good, there's nobody here. This is fine. Everything is great. Let's go to stream people. Users in chat. It's just me. Okay, cool. I'm just making sure. Okay. So I got stopped yesterday because I had a student call me, which of course is more important than anything else I can do. So I had to stop my stream yesterday because I needed to talk to that student. So sorry about that. That's, as we move forward, as we do this, I'm going to have to be flexible. I hope that you guys understand me trying to be flexible. And sorry, I'm exiting things. I'm distracted by my video again, like I was yesterday. So anyway, so I'm exiting this. I'm going to exit this. This is the quarantine thing that I'm making people do. Okay, I'm just going to minimize all of this. See, this is me moving my videos around for you guys. I'm going to minimize that. Actually, no. Yes. No, yes. Yes, no. Okay, we'll open a new tab. So I'm just going to go and reopen the 2 things I had open yesterday. I have already walked people through most of how to do this. I just actually still have to read the main article and actually fill in the graphic organizer for the article that I was reading. So I'm going to open up this article, which I'm reading, The British Raj Begins, and I'm going to open it with Google Docs because it's so handy. Okay. And then it does that every time. And then, ooh, look, I made the computer mad. And then, look at this. Got that ready. Holla. Okay. So I've got my annotated bibliography ready. I've got my document ready, and I've already, like I said, it saves it. So if you're just getting here today or you're just watching this video, if you'll actually go back to my video that it posted on April 6th, then you can see me talk about all this background information, which is really nice. That the Gale Online, I think this might actually just be from the article itself, like this is part of the article, but there's a global context given, there's background information given, there's key figures given. It's awesome. So all of this is what I got through yesterday. So I read about 2 pages yesterday, and then I had started to read this when I got, I had to go talk to someone else. So I'm going to read from this point forward. Just so you know, though, I read about the background information that basically explains the British East India Company controlled India for a while. They were in charge of like running the colony as a company, and then they messed up real bad when they caused the Sepoy Rebellion. And the Sepoy Rebellion goes from 1857 to 1858, and this caused the British government to take over from them, and it's called the Raj. It's called um, the British Raj means the British rule, and so it's where the British take direct rule of the colony, and the government takes over, and the person in charge. So, like, there's a Secretary of State for India who answered to the Queen, who lived in England, and then there's a person in India, the Governor General, who sorry, I'm making sure that you can see stuff. The Governor General who does all the ruling in India. He's a viceroy, like the kings for the Spanish Empire. In Mexico. Remember how the viceroys, basically did whatever they wanted because the people back home are 8 months away via like 4 months to tell you what happened and 4 months to get back from them saying how they felt about that. So it's a little different in the 1800s because there's way more connectivity. The telegraph, what year is the telegraph? Telegraph invented in 1844, and by 1866 there's a telegraph line being laid across the Atlantic Ocean. So I don't actually know. That's a further topic of discussion. How long did it take for them to get telegraphs set up? But telegraphs let people talk or communicate pretty quickly, within 24 hours, for the most part. Ooh, that's cold. There's ice in my tea. So anyway, so that's this background information, okay? And then these are people involved, which I thought was pretty dope. Mohammed Gandhi is involved. And this is like what's going on in the world piece by piece. All of this was very cool, like where things are at, what's going down. So I like that. So now I'm just going to read it because the first thing we're doing for this graphic organizer, which I've already explained, is we have to summarize the source, okay? I've already done the source citation when I first got the article and did the research. Now I have to read it, right? Like that's step 2 of like researching stuff, technically. So now I'm going to read the source. What are the main arguments? What is the point of this book/article/website? What topics are covered? And I've kind of decided to read the whole thing first, and then I'll go back to each section and summarize the sections for people who still don't understand what the heck it's about. Because I previously said in other streams, it's a high-level lexile. So this is a 1260 lexile level. And what that means is it's got bigger words in it. And so it might be harder for some people to understand. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to grow and learn, man. So let's do that together with me explaining to you what it means. All right. So I'm just going to read, and then I will summarize the source and do my assessment of it, and then reflect on it. And I'll be done hopefully pretty soon. So let's just see. Right now it's 5:14. I'm going to try not to get off task and go. On November 1st, 1858, Charles John Canning, from 1812 to 1862, the Governor General of India, read out a proclamation from Queen Victoria from 1819 to 1901. The Queen announced that she had assumed the government of India, but promised to respect Indian religious practices and to leave traditional rulers in charge of their lands. Indians were to have equality with all other British subjects, and appointments to the administration of the country would be based on merit rather than origin. This promise would not be fulfilled. However, the proclamation marked the beginning of direct British rule in India, a period known as the British Raj, from 1858 to 1947. The Sepoy Rebellion changed British ways of thinking about India. The British came to believe that their previous efforts to reform Indian systems and customs had been misguided. The experience of rebellion left them suspicious of Indians, and they believed that the best way to maintain stability was to abandon efforts to bring about social change. Instead, they focused on dividing and ruling, meaning splitting Indians into different groups, making sure that they retained the loyalty of at least some sectors of society, and preventing Indians from coming together in opposition to British rule. This strategy enabled the British to control India for almost a century. Some principalities, little provinces or counties, okay, were still ruled by Indian princes, and the British ended the doctrine of lapse, the policy of the East India Company that allowed the company to seize territories when an Indian ruler died without an heir. In this way, the British gained the goodwill of the princes, who ruled with British support and became important and wealthy allies of the British. Ordinary Indians were not encouraged to mix with the British and were kept out of positions of political power. Until 1923, examinations for entry into Indian civil service were held only in England, which meant that very few Indians were in a position to join the service. So, not good enough task. After 1923, examinations were held in India too, and by 1947, most civil servants were Indian. 1947 is the end of the Raj, okay? India's economy was run for the benefit of the British Empire rather than for the good of the Indian people. The British undertook large infrastructure projects, building canals, irrigation systems, mines, and shipping works. Railroads in particular flourished. Private investors were encouraged to put their money into rail infrastructure, and by 1910, India had the fourth largest railway system in the world. Despite these advancements, Indian industry was not well developed, since the country was seen as primarily a market for British goods. Raw materials such as cotton were exported to Britain, and cheap British textiles, cloth, were sent back to India, discouraging the growth of native industries. High taxation was a heavy burden on the population, and most businesses were owned by British entrepreneurs rather than Indians. Most profits made by British companies in India were sent home to Britain instead of reinvested in India. One of Britain's main interests in India was the country's ability to provide Britain with a huge standing army. 1/3 of the tax revenue gained from Indians was spent on financing the army. The army was rarely deployed in India, but it was used to fight Britain's wars abroad, in Africa and in China. Learning from experience of the Sepoy Rebellion, which had originated among the high caste Hindus of the Bengal army, the British drew their soldiers from what they called the military races of India: Sikhs, Rajputs, Gurkhas, and Muslims from northern India. Education in India had been carried out in English since the days of East India Company, and educated Indians began to agitate for greater involvement in governance. In 1885, the Indian National Congress, INC, was founded by Indian intellectuals and the instigation of the British civil servant Alan Octavian Hume, 1829 to. So he was a British person. If you were here yesterday, I thought he had to be Indian to start the Indian National Congress, but no, he's a British person who believes that Indians deserve to be in charge of themselves. Novel. So cool. The INC began as an organization of lawyers and other professionals, but by 1918 it had become a mass movement. The pioneer of nonviolent resistance, Mohandas Gandhi, from 1869 to 1948, and the future president of independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru, I still can't say his name right, from 1889 to 1964, that's how long he lived, were among its most important leaders. The INC evolved into a mostly Hindu movement. In 1906, the Muslim League was founded to represent the 20% of Indians who followed Islam. The British encouraged separation between Hindus and Muslims. Between 1909, separate seats on local councils were reserved for Muslims. For their part, especially in northern India, Muslims feared that any movement toward independence for India would put them at a disadvantage because of the Hindu majority. However, the INC and the League worked together for much of their history. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Muslim leader who would go to be the first leader of Pakistan, which is the northern part of India that breaks off when they do their own thing, was a member of the INC until 1920. Here's a picture. So that's confusing. So this goes with the picture, okay? In fact, I'm going to fix this because I can tell that, but if you did this, I don't know if you guys would notice that. So basically, for my purposes, I've got to fix this. See how I'm redoing that? So the Muslim leader, the guy who was the leader, Okay, so the guy who led Pakistan at first was a member of the Indian National Congress until 1920. Okay, so that's me rephrasing that. The first major resistance to British rule in India since the Sepoy Rebellion came after Britain decided to partition the province of Bengal in 1905. Okay, I feel like we need a map. I feel like a map is needed because you're going to need to know this. So, the first major resistance to British rule in India since the Sepoy Rebellion 1858 came after Britain decided to partition the province of Bengal in 1905. So, 50, 40, math's hard. I guess it's 48, 47, maybe 47 or 48 years. Math is hard. The Swadeshi movement, spearheaded by Bal Gangadhar Tilak from 1856 to 1920. So the Swadeshi movement, spearheaded by Bal Tilak, that's how I'm going to call him, called on Indians to boycott British goods. Britain was forced to roll back the partition of Bengal. So they wanted to break apart and cut off Bengal and make it its own colony. Indians boycotted British goods. They undid it. Later, Gandhi drew on the experience of Swadeshi in his campaigns of peaceful resistance to the British governance. Large numbers of Indian soldiers served in France and the Middle East during... Here, I'm going to make this bigger. Shoot. I bet that's easier for all involved. I'm sorry if it was hard before this. Ooh, but actually, I have to see that you can see it. See, I can see in the corner. Seeing if my box is too big. I'll have to keep it. Okay. Oh, you can see two paragraphs. Okay. I just read this first paragraph, right? Okay, so large numbers of Indian soldiers served in France and the Middle East during World War I to 1914 to 1918. Indians hoped their support for the British war effort would cause Britain to grant them self-government. Instead, when the war was over, Britain began to crack down on Indian political activity. The massacre of peaceful protesters at Jallianwala Bagh, Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar, on April 13th, 1919, began a new phase in the Indian independence movement. Okay, that's something I personally don't know much about. Okay. Gandhi's mass protests undermined British power, even as the agitation of the Muslim League made it clear that a united, independent India was not viable. It couldn't live. In 1947, British India was partitioned into two independent states, India and Pakistan. India was designated as a Hindu state, and Pakistan, or Pakistan as people say, was designated as a Muslim state. The British Raj had ended. Global effect. Now, see, I'm gonna do this because this is gonna bug me unless I fix it. Okay. So, global effect of the British Raj. Okay. The immediate aftermath of the partition was bloody. 1 million people were killed as Muslims and Hindus on the wrong side of the border. 1 million people were killed as Muslims and Hindus on the wrong side of the border scrambled to cross to safety. Tensions between India and Pakistan continued into the early 2000s. The two countries went to war several times over the disputed territory of Kashmir, and each country developed nuclear weapons as a means of defense against the other. India is today the world's largest democracy, and its path of development was shaped by its experience under British rule. English remains an official language of the country, and the Indian industries capitalize on Indian fluency in English to succeed at business in the globalized world. The infrastructure established by the British still remains at the cornerstone of Indian development. British rule also furthered the unification of India, which had fragmented in the period prior to the British East India Company rule and had always had local rulers who did not agree. In addition, effects of British colonization can be seen in the customs of Indian society. For example, the popularity of the game cricket. Despite some positive aspects of the British legacy, many Indians still remember the British Raj as a time of oppression, when Indian rights were trampled by the imperialist British. Indies, India's emergence as one of the world's foremost economies illustrates its great capacity for growth and development under independent self government. Hooray! That took me 11 minutes to read. And now I'm going to go through and just summarize for you verbally before I summarize in the paragraph, okay? So, what this is saying, this whole first part is saying that Queen Victoria took over in 1858, and the British learned their lesson from what the British East India Company had done wrong. And they promised Indians that everybody was equal and that they would treat them fairly and that they wouldn't mess with their customs. But they made it really hard for Indians to participate in government because even though you only had to pass a test to be in the government, you had to pass that test in England. So exclusively crazy rich people from India could even begin to afford to do that, even if they were educated and pretty well off in India. So for a long time, they kept British people in charge over Indians, even though they were teaching the Indian people as they went stuff like with English education systems. What they did to try to keep the Indians down was to basically ally with the rich people. And one of the things that they did to really help out with that was under the East India Company, whenever a ruler was in charge and he died without an heir to his throne, the East India Company was just like taking that land and saying, okay, this is ours now. We own this now. No one owns it. And that pissed people off. So they were like, okay, so y'all can still be in charge of your local area, but you need to pick someone and they need to work with us and they need to help us. Okay. So they got the local elites on their side, and ordinary Indians, like I said, they couldn't even really take the test unless they went um, to freaking England. Regular people, not even just poor people, but regular people were refused. They're not refused, but they were basically like strongly encouraged and also probably verbally harassed as they attempted to do things beyond their place. And so, once they start allowing people to take the test in India, turns out everyone's Indian. But before that, for a long time, until 1923, they made that basically impossible. This also says that basically the Indian economy existed to support England. They grew the stuff that people used to make things with, but then it got shipped to that place as a raw material. That place made the stuff and they sent it back to them. So, for example, for cotton, the Indians grow cotton, the British turn it into cloth or clothes, mostly just cloth. People still sew their own stuff, and then sent that to them for people to buy. And they always charge them more that direction, okay? So the raw goods are always worth less, then you put the work in it and then it's worth more. And so most of the profits from the British Raj go to Britain. Even when a company is built and, even companies that were owned by British entrepreneurs, first of all, most of the businesses are owned by them because people are taxed like crazy. And most of the profits from British companies are all sent back to Britain and are not spent on reinvesting in India, which means they're not building infrastructure, they're not building roads, they're not building schools, they're just, taking their money home. And what it's saying here is that one of the main ways that they wanted India and used India was actually for a huge standing army, which I'm not really into war stuff, so that makes me kind of sick. But, oh, can you even read this? Oh, I have it turned way down. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to look real quick and see if you can read this. Oh, yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Let's do 160. Okay. I have my little video down here turned way down so that I don't waste bandwidth on watching myself and checking the chat. Okay. But anyway, so they want the army to be huge and they want to be able to use people to do this, but they learned their lesson in the Sepoy Rebellion, because the Sepoy Rebellion started in a high caste army, which means it was rich people serving as soldiers. And they're like, no. So they pulled their soldiers from lower castes and military races, Sikhs, Reputes, Gurkhas, Muslims, people who weren't the upper echelons of society. First of all, so there wouldn't be rich people in that list. And second of all, so that they would uh, be loyal to the government. Big one, okay? So, education is carried out basically as people learned more, they got smarter, they did more things to try to resist British rule. And this really works. You know, they have the literally people in 1885. It shows this starts as early as 1885. People saying that Indians deserve to be in charge of themselves. The British civil servant that starts the Indian National Congress isn't even Indian, but, you know, recognizes human rights. So they start out as lawyers and other things, but it becomes a mass movement by 1918, and the guy who really starts nonviolence, Gandhi, and the future president of independent India, Nehru, both of them were important leaders in that. Mostly it was Hindus. Muslims also had their own thing going. And even though there's like a divide, especially in along northern India, that massively affects relationships between them now, for a long time they actually worked together. In fact, one of their dudes was actually a member, one of the Muslim League dudes was in the INC till 1920. And really people are doing okay, but the first real resistance came with these Swadeshis once they try to break off Bengal. They win by forcing them to do that. And, you know, basically the push for independence increases as they're basically earning it as far as they see it. They fought in World War One. They thought, okay, we've proved ourselves. We've done everything we're supposed to. And Britain still didn't give them their freedom. They actually instead cracked down on this because probably they saw other empires falling apart and were like, oh, crap, maybe that's on the cards for us. So anyway, they're not very successful, and then Gandhi really starts up his movement. I don't know actually what year did Gandhi? What year did Gandhi start his movement? Let's do movement, okay? Well, it's saying he's actually organizing as early as 1906, but probably not very effective, I guess. Hold on, I gotta know. This is important. Beliefs, Gandhi in South Africa. That's not important because it's another country. It returned to India. Opposition to British rule. Yeah, so there's this massacre of peaceful protests. And in 1919, he returns his medals. And he gets arrested in 1922. So I would say that he actually really gets started up in 1919 and is on their radar by 1922. He goes to jail. He's released in 1924. And then he continues actively fighting through the 1930s. And he gets killed, you guys. I don't know if you know this yet, but he was murdered. So, like, one of the truest examples of a martyr I could ever say. But anyway. So, Gandhi's mass protests undermined their power. They kind of, obviously they saw that as a problem. Agitation means they're, like, messing with him. But yeah, what this is saying is that the agitation of the Muslim League. So even as he protested and is fighting for a free India, the Muslims made it clear that India, one big piece, can't happen. So they do split into two places, India and Pakistan, when they are granted peace at the same time in 1947. And immediately, of course, globally, the millions of people died, and the tensions between India and Pakistan caused both of the areas to have nuclear weapons and, do cause further concerns for global stability. And today, India is awesome and killing it, and they still have issues. Like, there's still like backwards areas and HUDed places for sure. But honestly, like for the most part, it's a lot of people. But I got cities and streets and companies and all the things. So British rule also furthered the unification of India, which had fragmented. Yeah, so also British rule directly is basically what causes the Indians to unite into one place. Basically, had like a million baby places in charge, just like in Europe, just like everywhere else. And having one bad guy against them made it pretty obvious they needed to pick a side, go with someone. And yeah, they got things like cricket, but low key Indians hate the British Raj. So that's 10 minutes to explain it. All right, now I'm going to summarize this, okay? So I'm just going to go through it, and I'm just going to type a little bit, okay? So I'm just going to do, so Queen Victoria. And I'm actually putting this in my words. What I type here, I could use directly in my paper, so long as I cite it properly, because I'm paraphrasing, okay? So, let's... Queen Victoria took over India in 1858, and the British Raj began promises equality, all, and equality for all and access to government, but really they did everything could to keep people in a position of submission, in like a submissive position, uh, like only putting lower castes in the military, requiring people to go to England to take the test to be a part of the government, and allying themselves with local leaders. All right, so I would say that's the whole first part, right? The Indian economy under the British Raj. Here, and what I'll do is I'll do this by themes, okay? So governance, okay? And now I'm going to do econ. Okay, econ. So the economy under the British Raj was organized for the benefit of the British people. Raw goods and materials were raised and collected in India, sent to England, where they were turned into something be manufactured and then sold back to the Indians for a profit. Local industry was discouraged with high taxes. Most local industry was owned by British people who sent all profits home to England rather than investing in India. Okay? Would you say that gets through the... Yeah. Okay. So econ. What else we got? We got interactions, the environment, and here I'm just going to talk about monoculture because I just know the answer, but this doesn't really say that. So I'm going to say not a lot of info about this theme, which is probably pretty helpful. I just know that, monoculture and growing only one thing in a whole area means that other plants and crops even have to be imported, and also is usually way harder on the environment because they're doing it so like monoculture and growing one thing at a time slash over commercially one thing on large commercial farms, right? Okay, so I'm just telling you. So that's three of them. Okay, I don't think that there's much about technology here. Oh, no. Okay. So, but then society. Okay. So socially, Indians. Ooh, choose. Sorry. Oh no. What a touch. Okay. So Indians are treated as less than by the British. All but highest castes are kept apart. Um, uh, oh. Um, See, culture is to form a religion. So this division between the Muslims and the Hindus is what I'm going to put there. Um, mm, Society is like rich people, but yeah. So like the highest castes or higher castes are educated in the English manner, which actually fuels their desire for independence from the British. Also, I can't spell, so sorry. Okay, now culture. Culturally, India is culturally divided not only between the British and the Indians themselves, but also between large Muslim and Hindu populations. Most of the Muslims, let's do that, live in the northwestern part of the territory during the British Raj. And even though they all wanted to be independent from the British, they could not find a way to. I found it. Okay, so they could not find a way to work together and create one large country. Okay, so that's that. Now for technology, the only thing that's really mentioned as technology is the development of nuclear weapons. So I would say that that's an impact. Okay, so because of their differences and hatred for one another, India and Pakistan, the two parts of the former colony, developed nuclear weapons to defend each other from the other's ambitions, particularly in areas that they both claim and believe belong to them. Okay, now, did I cover everything? Oh, you know what? I'm going to add to culture a little bit. You might put this under society, but like, while Indian culture is impacted by British rule through their language, most people speak English, and education system that is largely still followed, and sports, some social pastimes such as sports, cricket, by and large, Indians prefer Indian culture, food, clothes, obviously religions, etc., and see their time under the British as a time of oppression, and obviously negatively. Okay, now that took longer than I expected to. TBH, I'm gonna smoosh this in. Yeah. Okay. What? No, it doesn't fix that. Okay, well, that's good enough. Okay, so that's all the things. So I've actually done the hardest part, just so you know. The next two parts are very easy, and I'll be done in just a few minutes. So now I have to assess/evaluate this source. So all of this, I could use this literally copy and pasting into my essay, which you are also allowed to do. Okay, you just have to cite it, which I'll show you how to do later. Okay, you're supposed to make a citation. That's what it should look like. In fact, I'm going to highlight this so you can see. I'm not actually going to do it yet because I'm trying to go fast. But this is in your paper where a citation. Like if I wrote this, this is my citation for that. Okay? And have I just answered a lot of this? Yes. And so you do this for each of your sources and then you pick which pieces work. Don't you see how nice that is? So anyway, so assessment evaluation of the source. Is this a useful source? And I'm just going to answer the questions. Yes. Yes, this is a useful source. How does it compare with other sources in my bibliography? This is a very thorough article that covers almost all aspects of the impacts of British rule on India. This can be used throughout this is a very thorough article that covers almost India. They don't mention much about technologies or interactions with the environment, but there is still a lot of information about what caused the Raj, what they did in the Raj, how it impacted India once it was free. Is the information reliable? So I'm just going to answer this. The information is reliable, and as it does come a respected scholarly article, and why it does have some shades of opinion that do shift slightly in favor of the Indian perspective, I think it is fairly written for both sides of the situation. Like, I don't think it's like saying Queen Victoria sucked. You know what I mean? So, what are the goals of the source? And I think the the goals this source are truly to educate and explain the experiences of how the British Raj began and ended in India. I think it is a very academic endeavor to try to do so quickly and understandably in easy to understand format. All right, so now I'm going to reflect on the source. How does this source help you complete this project? How does it shape your argument? How are you going to use this source in your project? Has it changed how you think about your topic? So, how does this source help me complete my project? This source helps me complete the project by giving me information for almost all parts of the questions. I can pull from this document very heavily. So how does it shape my argument? This document shapes my argument by giving me specific motives on the parts of the British, specific reactions on the part the Indians, and shows some connections between these actions slash reactions and the effects of those decisions on India and its current situation. Okay. How am I going to use this source in my project? I am going to use this source throughout my project by using it as direct evidence to answer the question in the prompt. So I'm actually going to go look at that real quick to tell you, because I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. So I'm going to load this up over here in Canvas so that it's the same way that you would get to it. I'm going to go to B1 because today was a B day. And I'm still going to load it up here. I am actually going to add this to NTI for you guys so that you can, you know what I mean, like get it to in both places, because you do all have to do it. But let's go, let's click this part. Now this is the assignment itself. It's just like what to do. All right. So it literally says, research how imperialism has left a lasting effect on economy, government, society, and culture of your chosen country. Create a Google Slides presentation to display your findings. So, you're supposed to look like you're answering an LEQ. I know that I said this part, so give me 1 sec. Yeah. Okay. And we're going to say it's an LEQ, but I'm probably going to give you guys documents so that if you had to, you could do it. But so I'm going to answer the question, evaluate the extent to which imperialism had a long-term impact politically, economically, socially, culturally on decolonized countries in the 20th and 21st centuries. So I'm going to use this source by using it as direct evidence to answer the prompt where I intend to show that the imperial system impacts India and its relationships with others to this day. However, the country has continued to thrive and succeed despite this interaction, event, situation, problem, despite the problems caused by colonialism. Okay, so, did I just write my thesis statement? I did. And look, I just did that just by thinking about it for a second. So I will show that the imperial system impacts India and its relationships with others to this day. However, the country has continued to thrive and succeed despite problems caused by colonialism. So yay, I'm done with my thesis statement. I might edit a little bit, but how has this changed you thinking about your topic? So this article, the first thing I read, so this really got me started thinking about the topic, got me through writing a thesis statement that might work for the whole paper. I will still need to read the other sources to make sure. Bam! And with that, I'm done. I have completed a beautiful, I might add. It's so long, it's so much, but I took less than an hour to do it. I didn't get started until doing this work until 4:14, and it is 5:57. And yes, I'm fast, so sorry. But I took 43 minutes to get done with this. Okay, so definitely a 45-minute activity. You can totally do it. And I'm giving you 2 class periods to work on this after, before it's due. But, you're also going to have to answer your research questions. You also have to look up a couple more sources. I've told you have to have at least, how many sources did I say you have to have? You have to have 3 sources. So I did take 45 minutes for that source and reading it and doing the annotated bibliography. But in doing so, I've kind of already written 3/2 of my paper. And so I really don't have a ton of work left to do. Once I get done with all the sourcing, just putting stuff where it goes is going to be easy peasy. So I hope that made sense. I'm going to do the other 2 sources for myself. Later. I'm going to do it before you guys have to, so I can use them as examples when I'm creating my project. But this video will serve as your guide for how to do the annotated bibliography. And no, you can't do exactly what I did because you're not allowed to use the same country. But, you have to complete 2 entries for annotated bibliographies. So I am saying you will have to spend 90 minutes on just reading and researching and thinking about your subject before you start to answer questions and start to create a Google Slides presentation for it. Okay? So if you have any questions, please remember that you can email me all the time. Right now we have this awesome office hours thing set up so that from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day I can help you out, and I will literally call you on my phone or I will Google Meet with you, whatever you are comfortable with, to help you in this time of what are we doing. So I love you all so much. I hope you have a really good day. I hope that this made sense, and I hope to hear from you soon as you start working on this. 11 class periods from now, because that's how long you have till you have to get there. Thanks and have a great day. Bye, guys.